this is going to be not a replay, but an homage, a reference to the original cock and ball spot that you mentioned.
Anything with Jack now is sort of Chekhov's cock and balls. You're just waiting for them to make an appearance.
In 2017, Universal Studios announced the birth of a new shared universe of monster movies, bringing their classic horror icons into the contemporary franchise film landscape. But after the critical and financial failure of its first installment, the project was indefinitely abandoned. Now, in 2022, the powers that be have called upon one pulp horror devotee and one snarky film critic to unearth the concept. I'm Dylan Roth.
And I'm Dalton DeShane.
Are you afraid of the dark universe?
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Are You Afraid of the Dark Universe? I am your co-host, Dylan Roth.
And I am co-host number 2, Dalton DeShane.
We really should be like co-host A and co-host 1, like the multiverse in the Futurama comics. That's a real deep cut.
That's what I'm not familiar with.
Anybody else read Bongo comics when they were in high school?
I'm sure we have, I'm going to guess exactly 6 listeners who understood that reference.
Well, hope you all love that reference.
And we're going to have exactly 8 who understand the rest of the references in this episode.
If you're new to the show, this is what we do here. Dalton and I have been definitely for real hired by Universal Pictures to revive the short-lived dark universe of interconnected monster movies. It started in 2017 with The Mummy, starring Tom Cruise.
Which we all saw.
Everybody in the world saw it, and even though it was a massive hit, they didn't make any more. Until now, because we have been pitching for the past couple of months new installments every other episode. We've actually published 8 of our own original stories now on this show, which will all, of course, eventually become real major motion pictures.
Yes.
And because this is a very big commitment from the studio, we also want to be getting various sort of promotional opportunities and crossovers and ways to promote the movies that we're pitching now. So one of the things that we do on episodes where we don't pitch new episodes is to work with other creators to build out our world so that we can better serve the public with our monster universe.
Unfortunately, in the past, we've had, some very big name professionals like Giovanni Colantonio talking to us about their video game idea. We had Frankie Starker talking to us about their expertise regarding fandom. And Universal has been sending us these people. Calvin Kasulki, you've heard the episodes. But Universal is busy right now. They've got the Renfield, sort of rollout they're doing. And so their kind of horror division has been kind of locked down tight. But we have been getting just some really aggressive DMs and texts and phone calls.
Yeah, I made the mistake of sharing the email of our email on the show a couple weeks ago, and since then, we've been getting incessant emails from a columnist for The Ringer, who I used to work with a long time ago. So I guess he thinks that we have like kind of a rapport or a familiarity that it's okay to send me like 8 emails a day about being on the show. But he's wore us down because it was WrestleMania this past weekend as we're recording this.
Yeah, he's been wanting us to talk to us about some sort of wrestling promotional tie-in for the Dark Universe, which, look, that I'm sure, really fun idea, but on our priority list, we're building a Hollywood franchise here. That's down the list, the WrestleMania promotion. And so,
especially since we just missed Mania, right? We have to wait until at least next Mania.
It's almost like we scheduled this poorly and somehow are releasing this 2 weeks after WrestleMania.
But in any case, he's worn us down, so we've got him on the line, and we have no idea what he's got for us, but especially since, at least for the time being, because now WWE is getting bought up by another company, so who knows, WWE is on Peacock, a Universal streaming service, so there is a relationship there.
That's true.
It seemed like it fit into our show that we should entertain the idea of a WrestleMania crossover. Plus, Dalton and I are both big wrestling fans.
We're wrestling nerds.
We know that some of you who are listening are. Thanks for joining the Discord.
We are kind of coworkers with Vince McMahon, if you think about it.
Technically, we're kind of part of the same structure, corporately.
We're kind of on the same level as Vince McMahon, too. Since we're constructing the Dark Universe, he's sort of constructing the WWE stuff. We're kind of like peers.
Yeah, and we've both spread around a lot of hush money about the various crimes we've committed. So,
yes.
cut that out.
Not crimes like he did.
No,
more
not sexual harassment or assault crimes.
No, just embezzlement.
Yes,
and
so
maybe copyright infringement and using other people's likenesses without their permission.
Yes. So before we dig an even deeper legal hole for ourselves, let's hear from our guest today, columnist for The Ringer, Nick Bond. Hello, Nick.
Hey, guys. Hey. I just came in a little bit late. I was taking care of my kid. But I took off. I called the babysitter so that we could do this. I'm just really excited to be here. I love the work you guys are doing, especially Dalton, Dylan.
Thank you so much. Always nice to meet a fan.
Yes, Nick, it's great to have you here. Thanks for all your messages. Thanks for all your very enthusiastic emails.
So you did get that thing I sent you?
I did. Yes, and it's currently in thawing out in my sink, and I can't wait to see what's in the center of the huge block of ice you sent me. But it's
very glass onion of you.
Very thoughtful gift.
I think would be a bit. Anyway, continue. Sorry.
We really don't know what you have in mind other than you've been very enthusiastic about wanting to pitch a crossover between our Dark Universe and WWE's the biggest event in sports entertainment, WrestleMania.
The showcase of the Immortals.
Yes, the granddaddy of them all.
Okay, so the needle we have to thread here in this episode is, there will be people, I'm sure, who listen to this because they're fans of your work and they want to hear you talk about wrestling, who are unfamiliar with the dark universe of films that have not actually been released yet, except for as pitches on this podcast. And there will be some people who listen to the show who don't know about wrestling, and we'll have to make sure that we give proper context to them as well. So please forgive me if we interrupt any point to make sure that we are translating the various the wrestling jargon, the kind of things.
Everyone just preemptively Google kayfabe right now.
We have said it on the show a number of times, but
this show is very heavily kayfabe.
So, Nick, we've chewed up a good 7 minutes of the show already. Let's just do whatever you're going to do, man.
Makes sense. You'd be good at vamping.
Vamping.
Get it? Because it's the dark universe? Yeah, I've been waiting on that one for a while.
Unfortunately, Nick, you're fitting really well into the way that we run our show.
So again, I'm not familiar with movies, but so that's where you guys are going to help me. But what I do have is a setup for a wrestling match. As you guys know, WWE has sort of delved, especially in the pandemic, in what are called cinematic matches, which, unlike regular matches, which take place on the stage that is the ring, they take place in a sound stage or an abandoned house or something like that. It's mostly abandoned places, barnyards, boneyards, that kind of thing. Yards of varying kinds. Fun houses too.
The Toon Yards.
So yes.
And no one can forget the Toon Yards WrestleMania match.
Versus 100 Gex, yeah.
And Elias hasn't been seen since.
So basically my idea was to do something like that with my favorite, all due respect, part of the Dark Universe so far, which was the Invisible Man. I wasn't sure exactly about the availability because, again, you guys haven't really been that great about getting back to me, Dylan. Dalton, you're great. Thank you.
This is Dylan's fault. Dylan runs the email and all that kind of stuff. I don't touch it. I do the editing.
So obviously you're working with the team in terms of casting and stuff like that. You know everybody's availability. John C. Reilly, Walton Goggins, and Darcy Carden. I was hoping they would be available. Do you have an idea of how many shooting days we might be able to get with them? Week, maybe 3.
I was thinking which of our cast members would be down to actually do something with the WWE, and these 3 seem like good candidates. I was also thinking our Wolfmen and women would be good candidates of actors who would be game to
Yeah, but I think the 3 that you've mentioned, I mean, to me, I feel like the fact that Walton Goggins has never done anything like wrestling promoter adjacent seems insane to me. It's just such an amazing.
I don't know if you've ever seen Righteous Gemstones.
Oh, I have, and that's close, right?
That is just a wrestling show.
I mean, literally, it had wrestling in season 2, which is kind of crazy. John C. Reilly, I think, could probably appear, but also since he's the Invisible Man, he doesn't even actually, unless you have some curveballs for us in your pitch, he doesn't have to actually appear.
It's funny that you mentioned that. So I did have an idea for John. John is okay if I call him John. I hope he doesn't. This isn't going to get back to him.
Yes, you can call that or Mr. Riley.
Mr. Riley. So what we actually need, and if you guys have one left over from the Invisible Man, the original, of his cock and balls is what we need. We need that general area. I have some ideas.
So like the prosthetics
for the
we
cock and
used
balls.
for the movie and
Sure. Whatever you guys use to get the cock and ball effect.
I'm going to interrupt here to provide some context to new listeners.
That's right.
In Dalton's pitch for The Invisible Man, which is our 4th episode, and I highly recommend you go back and listen to it if you haven't. The Invisible Man, a hapless food chemist named Dr. Jack Griffin, played by John C. Reilly, has a scene in which he is trying to burgle a house.
Yes.
And then powders fall onto his groin and to all outward appearances.
Powder, maybe.
Yes, he's just a floating cock and balls and nothing else.
And he is referred to as the porno ghost, I believe, at one point.
That's right.
Yes, The Invisible Man was a slapstick comedy, and so I tried to play with the comedy of an Invisible Man as much as possible. A big part of that is that he would be nude all the time, and John C. Reilly just, that it seems like a very kind of Adam McKay, Will Ferrell movie gag to do.
Walton Goggins plays a corrupt police sheriff, as they're famously called.
Yes.
A corrupt sheriff named Dudley Hall, who becomes a vampire.
Mm-hmm.
And Darcy Carden plays a paranormal investigator by the name of Carol Lemley.
Yeah, sort of an amateur Ghostbuster, just kind of operating out of her car. I also want to, before we get too deep into the pitch, let's also provide some wrestling context here for people who don't watch wrestling or WWE. Let's talk a little bit about sort of the history of these sort of promotional tie-in things, because this is not new to WWE. This, I think, goes back
a
long, long ways. One of the more recent ones was there was a long program with Johnny Knoxville for Jackass Forever, which culminated in a singles match, I believe, between him and Sami Zayn, and also Johnny Knoxville entering the Royal Rumble, which is a big 30-man match. Is that correct?
It's a great place for cameos, and like Michael Shea and the other guy from Weekend Update once entered the Royal Rumble.
Mm-hmm.
Shaquille O'Neal's been in the Rumble.
Jon Stewart did something. I don't know if there was the Rumble.
He cost John Cena a chance at a 16th world title in his match against Seth Rollins because he didn't think that John Cena should pass Ric Flair.
Thank you, Jon Stewart, for your service. But most recently and most relevantly to this podcast, the most recent movie tie-in in WWE happened at this year's WrestleMania, and it starred Russell Crowe promoting The Pope's Exorcist, which is coming out in theaters this month. And there was a big ad for The Pope's Exorcist that aired before the Hell in a Cell match between the Demon Finn Balor and Edge. And then Russell Crowe did like a voiceover introduction. He wasn't there. I mean, good for Russell Crowe for being game to do the WWE promotional thing, but he was not present. He did like a voiceover introduction to the match and then tweeted about it later, congratulating both Finn and the Edge for their performance. But
which is a great way of saying did not watch the match.
No, but literal Dark Universe alumnus Russell Crowe killed off in the Dark Legion House of Dracula. Spoiler alert. Our Jekyll and Hyde has done a WWE promotional thing as recently as 2 weeks ago.
And if I can interject.
Yes, go ahead.
There's also a movie tie-in with Dave Bautista's and Michael Bay. Was it Michael Bay? No, Zack Snyder. Zack Snyder's zombie movie.
Oh, right.
Which name escapes me.
Army of the
so
Dead.
That match
the Dead, yeah.
between The Miz and Damian Priest involved zombies in the match. So
yeah.
Miz, who is going to be one of our stars, I'm thinking, for a number of reasons. He is the celebrity handholder. I've actually written about this at The Ringer. And Ricochet, who is just really talented and will be able to pull off most of the spots we have planned out. He's also very telegenic. He's a very handsome young man.
And spots refers to like a big wrestling move.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be done in the ring.
A centerpiece, an action set piece kind of thing, but on a much smaller scale would be the best way to
like
think
a big
about
move that makes everyone
context
get to their feet and cheer or boo because it's especially athletic in the context of the match.
Yes, exactly. So those are what we're going into. And you had mentioned earlier, kayfabe is the permeable membrane between the reality of our world and the unreality of wrestling would be the best way to think about.
Yes, you might be
Kayfabe.
thinking like, how zombies in a match, the Pope's exorcist, how does this... Well, I thought this was like a sports competition. WWE is, of course, referred to as sports entertainment. I'm sure you already know, even if you don't know wrestling, that it is pre-scripted.
What?
Yes, I'm sorry to burst your bubble, Dylan. Dylan has been thinking everything is real the whole time. He thought zombies were real because they were in that Army of the Dead match. But that allows them to tell some very creative storylines.
Devastated right now.
I'm we're going to pause right now for Dylan to go re-examine his life. But also, as you were saying, there's a history of these sort of pre-filmed matches, especially during the pandemic, because during the pandemic, they were not allowed to have live audiences during these wrestling matches. But of course, they didn't stop showing wrestling for 8 hours a week. They had to get creative. And oftentimes, they did these sort of taped and edited matches, sometimes in a wrestling ring on the roof of the WWE headquarters, but more oftentimes in some sort of yard.
And another thing about talking about kayfabe, talking about the sort of celebrity-involved matches and angles. Angles is sort of the wrestling term for like a storyline. You'll realize that a lot of the terms about wrestling are derived from Carney terms. So the terms you would use if you were doing a con, because that's sort of how wrestling began. And you can read all about it in a really good graphic novel called The Comics History of Wrestling by Aubrey Sitterson.
It's so good.
Oh my God, I forgot the artist's name. Chris Moreno. It's terrific. It's a really great way to learn all about wrestling. Or you can read Nick Bond write about it for The Ringer.
Yay!
I digress. When you involve famous people who are not athletes in professional wrestling, they have a superpower, and that's that they're famous. And in the WWE, at least, being famous makes you an unbeatable wrestler. You don't have to actually have any kind of skills. You can just show up. Pat McAfee, conservative sports podcaster or whatever, can just show up in a wrestling match and beat The Miz, like a 5-time world champion or whatever, because he's famous.
Pat has been doing wrestling, though. He's been doing like some wrestling, if I'm not mistaken, right, Nick?
Yeah, so, well, the thing with Pat is he's also like a world-class athlete.
Okay, well, let me bad example.
Let's go to Johnny Knoxville. Johnny Knoxville can booby trap the ring with jackass-like traps and gizmos and stuff, and then beat Sami Zayn.
Snooki
or Bad Bunny would be another great example.
Although I hear Bad Bunny's an incredible wrestler.
Yeah, he's a good wrestler for a guy that has had 5 matches or however many he's had, but he has the power. I don't usually use this term in any other context. The plot armor of being able to do the fact that he can do any wrestling move makes them like Hulk Hogan level attacks as opposed to a 5'6"
right.
Yes,
man.
Bad Bunny has the plot armor of being the most famous man in the world.
But yeah, suspension of disbelief in wrestling, it varies from just like, it's important to remember that wrestling is a medium and not a genre. Within wrestling, there are many different genres of matches that have their different levels of suspension of disbelief. And a celebrity-involved wrestling angle is usually on the more cartoonish end, because you have to set aside the idea that these are some of the best athletes in the world who are trained to play at this particular sport, and therefore should obviously have the advantage over Hugh Jackman, an actor, jacked though he may be. But Hugh Jackman, if he's in a wrestling match, is going to win. He's going to beat Damian Sandow or whoever it is he defeated during his angle promoting the Wolverine in 2014.
And we can believe that a 55-year-old Jon Stewart can come in with a chair and cost John Cena a championship. You know?
A man constructed entirely out of muscle.
Yes.
World championship. Yeah.
But Nick, I like your choice to do a cinematic match, not only because it allows us to do sort of special effects stuff with our Invisible Man, but because that is also a venue through which WWE has explored a further separation in terms of your suspension of disbelief. That they get to do horror movie stuff, like in the match between John Cena and Bray Wyatt during the big COVID WrestleMania, which is a fully pre-taped weird sort of mashup between a horror movie and a Tim and Eric sketch, where like there's like time travel and stuff.
They wrestle, yes. And actually, if you go back to my tweets when that match was happening, I get very excited because I said they figured out time. Oh my God, they figured out time. Because that is the one way in which wrestling is different than every other medium that I can think of, where the story has to take place in real time inherently.
Right.
There is no just skipping ahead the way that you can in any other medium I can think of. So those cinematic matches allow for day-night switches, things like that, which is why I wanted to keep this.
And there was that, I believe it was the Boneyard match between AJ Styles and The Undertaker, where Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson canonically died. They were murdered in that match, and I believe they were never seen in WWE again. I think
they not in that. They came back after they went to Japan, but they've only been seen a handful of times because they're terrible.
But when they died, they were gone indefinitely.
Yeah, they were murdered.
So
yes, they were written off the show.
That is not something
that way,
that would happen in a normal match. I don't think anyone would. In like a live match, they would tell you that they were dead. But in these sort of pre-taped ones that sort of exist on an elevated version of wrestling reality, you can have spooky, weird shit happen, which is perfect for the Dark Universe for us to promote our film series.
Yeah. So let's get into the gritty of the match. Who do you have? Let's talk again about, you said you wanted to use the Invisible Man, Jack Griffin, as played by John C. Reilly. You want to have Sheriff or former Sheriff Dudley Hall, played by Walton Goggins, and paranormal investigator Carol Lemley, played by Darcy Carden, as our Dark Universe characters. Who are the wrestlers that you want involved in this match from WWE, and what are their gimmicks?
So the Miz, Mike Mizanin, he is a former reality star turned professional wrestler. All kidding aside, he's one of the best performers they've ever had in terms of an all around talent. In terms of acting, he's good. He's TV actor level quality, and he's TV actor level handsome, and that's what we need for this.
And he's perfect for these like gimmick matches too. Like he does the storytelling really well. He buys into the elevated storytelling.
The way I've described him previously is he is the plumbing system of the WWE. He is the one that processes all of the shit and makes it so that everybody is healthy. He is perfect. He is Teflon in terms of his gimmick. You really can't. He's unburyable.
And he's usually a heel, which for people listening, that means he's like the bad guy in the story, but he's the kind of bad guy that you love to hate. I think fans love The Miz, but in the context of the story, you hate him for the right reasons, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah, he's a coward.
Yeah, he's a weasel heel is what they call it, right?
Yeah.
He's always
chicken shit is actually
exactly. He's finding ways around having to actually fight, and he cheats to win. But he's always capable of being taken seriously when you need him to. And that's you talk about him being Teflon. The crazy thing about The Miz is that when you have a stupid promotional angle, or you have to sell a reality show, or do a fucking candy commercial, or whatever it is, he's always game, and somehow he always comes out of it taken exactly the same level as seriously.
Yes. And then we have Ricochet, who, as I think I mentioned earlier, is a very handsome man.
Yes.
Who looks like a professional wrestler. And I've seen him in enough stuff backstage and things like that I think this would be a nice star turn for him.
He looks like the most athletic man in the world.
Yes.
Yeah. If just from body type alone, Ricochet is one of the people most qualified in the entire world to play a live action Dick Grayson. And he could do it. Like
And he should do it.
I got to see him wrestle in like a VFW hall a couple of years ago, and the ceiling was too low. He's the kind of guy who goes onto that top turnbuckle and will do, like an unbelievable number of rotations high in the air. And my wife and I were seriously worried that he was going to bump his head.
Warner Brothers, call us. We'll write your Nightwing movie.
Do not know if
Ricochet.
he can act.
And then we're also going to start off with a cameo by Xavier Woods of the New Day, because this takes place, and this is important because we've talked, and I sent, again, Dylan sent a lot of emails about this, cross-platform synergy.
Love those words.
This is something that's going to be really helpful in terms of that, because this actually ties into the Netflix universe of the choose your own adventure escape from the Undertaker story.
Okay, now tell us more about this.
So I only got through the first little bit because it's not good. But the part I got through was definitely a thing. that happened. It's basically, I don't know if anybody's ever done a choose your own adventure on Netflix, but it is literally like reading a book in terms of you get to the end of a story segment and they say, well, which way do you want to go? And it mostly involves you going back and the Undertaker killing you, as far as I can tell.
And to sort of explain that sort of project in general, WWE did a partnership with Netflix to do a sort of limited series that involved the New Day, who we're talking about here, who are a tag team, one of whom their members is named Xavier Woods. And this was a sort of, was it wrestling? Was it just sort of like a story about them
the
sort
best
of
way I can describe
Scooby-Dooing
it,
the Undertaker?
Yeah, Scooby-Dooing the Undertaker. So there's an old comic involving the Undertaker and the Ultimate Warrior, where the Undertaker actually runs a funeral parlor. It's not just a stage and a set on their wrestling show. And basically it takes place in a like kind of kayfabed universe. Like the universe of kayfabe expands and takes over the real world. And it becomes like, oh, what would they, Detective Pikachu style, but with wrestlers.
Sure. I love the idea of all the wrestlers just having like day jobs and then going and wrestling at night. That's so good.
Yes.
And it's all like related to their gimmick. Like, yeah, he just runs a funeral home.
Yes.
And, you know,
he's also dead.
Yes, he's all undead. Yeah, that's basically that kind of style of like madcap kind of Scooby-Doo is the perfect way to put it. That there is an understanding that there is maybe not actual magic, but there's enough magic in the world to keep it rolling. Does that make sense?
And so basically your pitch for this crossover sort of takes place in a continuation of this Netflix miniseries universe.
Yeah, where it's goofy and supernatural and all of this stuff, as opposed to the more grounded, although the more grounded Boneyard match and the Swamp match at the horror show at Extreme Rules. So those are two pretty prominent ones. It is much closer, but it isn't quite as far out there as the Firefly Funhouse, which we mentioned, which is literally a journey inside of John Cena's mind through the prism of the Firefly Funhouse.
Man,
so like
that match ruled so hard.
That was
slapped so fucking hard.
If Grant Morrison booked a wrestling match, it would have been the Firefly Funhouse match.
Yeah.
But I like this idea of keeping it in that Netflix universe because honestly, the idea of the Undertaker being an undead funeral home owner, I feel like is consistent with the Dark Universe. Just like these sort of like it actually reminds me almost of our creature, who's like a monster who has a job, who's like has like a role to play, and so merging this sort of like you said, like a magical sort of version of the WWE universe with the Dark Universe seems like a pretty seamless way to make our Invisible Man, you know, sort of fit in into this world and not have to worry with the logistics of having an invisible person like wrestling a live match, which would be tough to pull off.
Although people have done it. It was a gimmick that I was going
to say, it actually reminds me of Sandow. Sandow did a bunch of spots when he was Mizdow specifically, where he would just take bumps playing.
Yes, but I was thinking of Joey Janela. Used to wrestle the Invisible Man like every year at something.
I remember seeing, and God, I don't have the names here, but a match between two invisible wrestlers where the ref was basically doing all the work. It was like a big showcase for the ref because he had to like sell all the pins and stuff when there was nobody in the ring at all. Really incredible. Search that out if you can find it. And shout out, by the way, while we're talking about referees, to listener Steve Dean, who is a wrestling referee and is probably listening to this right now. You rock, and this episode is dedicated to you. And also RJ City, who maybe listens to this podcast. RJ, if you listen to this, shout out to you. We love you and AEW. Sorry to leave AEW out of this episode, and hit us up on Instagram or something.
Yeah,
also,
DM us.
RJ, if you're listening, I'd love to do a piece on you for The Ringer. Just throwing it out there. Thanks.
See, you have career opportunities happen right here on our show.
All three of us trying to network live on air to someone we don't know is listening.
All kidding aside, that was a shoot. That is a shoot, brother.
All right. Well, let's segue. So I'm kind of imagining then that we sort of have a way to make this folded in with both of our universes that like maybe within the Dark Universe, there's an extra layer of kayfabe to professional wrestling where there's the top layer, which is it's a sporting event and it's real. And these characters sometimes have weird, vaguely defined magic powers that we're not afraid of in the context of wrestling. Below that is, the Undertaker is Mark Calloway, a professional wrestler who's been running in this gimmick for 30 years. And below that is the even more secret kayfabe that almost nobody knows, which is, no, the magic is real.
Yes.
There is real occult stuff happening in wrestling, and kayfabe is a smokescreen within, and it's still a staged wrestling. It's still a staged.
This is getting really. This is like Inception. I'm losing track of the layers here.
So
but
maybe
like
it's not important to your story, but like that's like I think would be cool. It like this sort of like fucking Lucha Underground shit of like
if we're just shooting now. So what I would do is have Carol be very skeptical about professional wrestling. And have and my plan was to have Jack be a huge fan, like the biggest possible mark.
Yes.
And he gets upset with Carol specifically because she's like, it's fake, and I cannot believe you. And he's like, you believe in ghosts.
I love this. Like, yeah.
And then at the end, she's like, no, these readings are off the charts. So the implication is that either her stuff is faulty, which I don't know which way you guys lean with that, or no, really, there is a magic to professional wrestling that made it so that Ricochet could do a Canadian destroyer to a naked man. Like that kind of stuff. I think that they do have superpowers. They're real life superheroes. That's kind of the gimmick. So
I love that. I think
fun.
That works. Yeah.
Before we dive into the match itself, let's take a quick break. Going to hear from one of our friendly partner podcasts out there in the podosphere. And we'll be back in just a second with more Are You Afraid of the Dark Universe?
Greetings, my name is Don Cardenas, and I'm the host of the Comics Coffee Metal podcast, where I talk to creatives in and around those fields about the things they're doing and the things they're enjoying. I've had such amazing guests on my show, such as YouTube Metal Gods, Taylor Danley and Andrew Vena, comic book artist Liana Kangas, Daniel Warren Johnson, Kelly Williams, Steens, Metallica and Monster Magnet music video director and comic book writer Phil Mucci, musician and art director of Marvel's animated series Hitmonkey, Kevin Mellon, and of course, this podcast's very own Dalton DeShane. The podcast is available on all the major pod platforms, including Google Play, Spotify, Apple Music, and so much more. You can also go to comicscoffeemetal.com and find direct links to the shows there. Thanks for listening, and I hope to see you around.
Cold open. Ricochet leaning against a car on a cell phone with Xavier Woods, who is himself about to embark on the Choose Your Own Adventure Netflix special, Escape from the Undertaker. They did with The Undertaker.
Listen, I know you said you were riding with E and Kobe tonight because you had those
plans with The Undertaker. Yeah. I'd really prefer if we had headed out a little earlier. It's getting pretty dark, and I try not to think about things in this way, but The Undertaker, the dark, the whole thing just seems like a Gooker level bad idea. There's something in the air tonight. I'm just thinking maybe we should all head back to the...
Miz, dressed in a suit, pulls the earbud out of Ricochet's ear.
Are you done talking to your little buddies? We have things to do, people to see. How are fans going to catch a glimpse of the most must-see superstar in WWE history if his drive...
Tell me you did not say that. Tell me you did not just call me your driver. I will put my foot so far up your ass.
Driver? I didn't say driver. I was about to say driving buddy before you so rudely interrupted me. Now listen, I know you accomplished a lot out there where the wild things are. A puma's roar is heard. But in the WWE, you have a lot to learn from me.
Like how to last as long as you have in the business without ever learning how to fight?
How dare you? I am a 2-time Grand Slam champion, a WrestleMania main eventer, and
someone so annoying that his wife kicked him out of the family bus.
It was a Ms. and Mrs. misunderstanding. I didn't realize it was her moisturizer. Now she has my kids and my gear and my headshots.
Mike, okay, if you promise to stop crying, we can get going. Just please pull yourself together.
Ricochet and Miz both open the doors to Ricochet's very nice sports car as the camera pans up to the title, sitting on it for a few beats before the camera pans back down on Darcy Carden, sitting next to a man-shaped full-body running suit sitting in the car seat next to her.
Doesn't seem like that place will work. Not enough windows and not nearly close enough to any major gardening or home improvement stores to quickly resupply during an attack on the homestead.
Sure, but it had a nice porch, and boy, that view of the sunset over water. Even with a name like Parts Unknown, this feels like a place people should be talking about more. I guess that's not why we're here, though.
That's right. We desperately need to find somewhere to set up while you're on the run.
Oh, I'm sure it's not as big a deal as you're making it out to be. Vampires using my blood to make themselves invisible is a fad. This is going to be like Tamagotchis or pet rocks. And I also don't understand why I need to be aerodynamic. Isn't being invisible enough?
It's not just that they're invisible. Because of your serum, we could have a bunch of daywalkers run walking around. And when you're being hunted by the undead, it requires for you to be extra alive, or at least in good enough shape to pass ACFT requirements. This outfit will help you wick away whatever excess moisture you produce with your thing.
It's still my skin. You just can't see it. Don't you understand, Carol? I'm just a guy with an incurable skin condition he gave himself in an industrial accident, sitting in front of a lady that tried to hunt him when she thought he was a ghost, asking her if we can head back to the hotel now. My dogs are barking and I need to take this thing off. I think it's starting to chafe. I don't understand why I can't just take it off now. It's not like anybody would see anything.
Listen, we still don't know how all these changes have affected your physiology, and we need all the help we can get making sure your skin stays on your body. I mean, I can see your pores from here.
Now you're just being hurtful.
Carol and Jack start to pull away the camera as the camera pushes through to the back seat before turning sharply in the back seat so that it's pointed perpendicular to the road, i.e. facing out the back left window, as two yellow eyes appear before the scene cuts quick to black. Miz and Ricochet are in the car listening to what's clearly a Miz self-help tape called Awesome Is as Awesome Does as it starts to violently shake before coming to a full stop. Ricochet looks at the Miz after hitting the OnStar equivalent in his car.
Mike, I appreciate that you filled the gas tank at the last stop, but do you remember by chance which one you put in there?
Whatever was cheapest. Monroe's dance lessons don't pay for themselves. Neither does Maurice's moisturizer.
Hello, Mr. O'Shea?
That's not my... You know what? Never mind. Hi, I was just traveling through what seems to be a very lovely part of... Where are we?
Parts unknown?
I like this note you have here. The OnStar static makes it sound like a cheap audience pop. Is there any way you could tell us on your end what the issue seems to be?
Just a moment. Please allow me to run some diagnostics remotely.
Miz, it's getting late. Maybe we should just find a place nearby.
No way. The Miz doesn't miss town, and he certainly doesn't do it for the likes of you and this low-rent piece of junk Ferrari you drive around.
Listen, I'm not driving much more after this, and considering you don't know how to drive a stick, can we please just find a place to stay?
In this town? Do you have any idea what kind of accommodations I'm used to? Top of the line, 5-star, every place I stay might as well have taken place in the Tokyo Dome.
What about there?
Ricochet sees a sign outside a somewhat pleasant but significantly run-down hotel that says Smackdown Hotel.
What about there? You can't tell me you haven't wanted to stay there at least once.
I actually did at a Survivor Series. I can still taste the dirt in my mouth. Fine, but you're paying. It's your fault we're stuck here. It's your fault and you're stupid.
Hello, Mr. O'Shea? I don't know how to tell you this, but it appears that somebody accidentally put what appears to be ethyl alcohol in your gas tank. It's possible that there may be some permanent damage to your car, but we'll have to have somebody come out and check on your car to be absolutely sure.
Well,
unfortunately, we will not be able to send anybody out until tomorrow, but it should be first thing. We have a dispatch in Suplay City, and they'll send somebody out just as soon as the sun rises, okay?
I'll pay for the hotel. The script pauses there, but I love this. So that was Nick's script that he wrote for the beginning of our WrestleMania mini film Dark Universe crossover. I really love your voice for Jack and Carol is great, and I mean the Miz too. That is exactly what the Miz sounds like.
Yeah, the tone that you set also feels really like a great way to blend the sort of slapstick comedy mode of Dalton's Invisible Man into sort of like a Scooby-Doo B-movie vibe. Yes. That you could do for like a lighthearted produced match.
Well, and I love that this really does feel like a great sort of in-between story for the Invisible Man, because we kind of, it seems like we're catching...
I was thinking, thanks, Dalton, you're the best, Dylan. I'm surprised you didn't pick up on this quicker. So, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, that's their names, right? Are dead. Yeah. That's what I was thinking is a kind of side story that could take place anytime in the continuity, because I understand that you have changed the basic feelings towards the world for the Invisible Man for Jack. So I kind of wanted to allow this to be plugged in at any point.
Well, I think it actually makes one thing I was actually not worried about with this was making this fit into the canon. I feel like a lot of the WrestleMania stuff doesn't have to strictly fit into the Dark Universe canon, but this actually kind of does. I feel like it pretty cleanly, at least so far, takes place between the Invisible Man and the Dark Legion, where Jack
That's what I was hoping for, yes.
Yeah, Jack knows now that that the vampires want his blood, but they haven't gotten the full team together yet. So it's just him and Carol sort of preparing. And it really does kind of feel like a almost like comic book tie-in to the movie that just kind of explores a sort of in-between story that happens between the films in a very fun way, which I think Jack actually is the one best suited to that because of how much hell he goes through in the Dark Legion, giving him more comedy stuff to play with that's in the vein of that first movie, I think is really smart for our movie universe, not just for a promotional tie-in.
Thanks again, Dalton. This is the feedback I want, Dylan. This is the feedback.
I'm sorry. I was just checking my phone for a minute. Were we talking about, do we like your pitch? Is it good?
Dalton does.
Okay, then it's out of my hands. Well, let's. This is delightful, and I am excited to talk a little bit more about how the match itself takes shape. So they're meeting at the SmackDown Hotel.
Yeah.
So
summarize the premise for us. So we've got the Miz and Ricochet are maybe on their way to the pay-per-view or something.
Yeah, they're just on their way to another show. Miz got kicked out of the bus by his wife because he used her moisturizer, as one does. And she's basically like, I've had enough of your bullshit. You're out. So he begs Ricochet to drive him to the next town. They get lost, and then Miz causes their car to break down. So they decide to book a room at the SmackDown Hotel as like, it's funny, we're in parts unknown SmackDown Hotel. And then you find out that that's where Carol and Jack are going back to.
Okay, so they've been staying there.
Yeah. When they say go back to the hotel, that's the hotel to which they're referring. It's the only one in town. So when they get there, the Miz and Ricochet are booking their rooms. So when they arrive, Jack freaks out because he
recognizes them. I actually love this as a canonical thing for Jack's character, that he loves professional wrestling. That feels very much of a piece with
that's
this
right. He loves theater. He's like kind of a regular guy.
Yes, 100%. I really identified with Jack, so that's why I was excited to write for him. And he and Carol get into an argument essentially, and we could build that out the way that we have. I do think I got the voice. I feel better about how close I got to the voices for them. Mm-hmm. And they get into a really serious argument where essentially Carol's like, this is fake. How could you believe any of this? And what's wrong with you? Mm-hmm. And Jack gets genuinely upset at Carol, which is understandable because it's like, no, I like this thing. It doesn't make you better than me that you like
every
it.
Wrestling fan's experienced this.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And it also appeal in that way. So they go up to their room and they're not happy. And the Miz and Ricochet are going back and forth. And then they go up to their room, and that's kind of the end of the scene. And then you see Walton Goggins, you see Dudley, you see his eyes again. And we'll just keep showing his eyes.
So that was Dudley that we saw when they were in the car, sort of out the window.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Cool.
And that's okay, I assume. I don't want to be stepping on any
sure.
As long as we don't kill Dudley. I mean, again, I feel like the canon of this is allowed to be loose.
Yeah, but we do kill Dudley in the Dark Legion House of Dracula. But so long as he survives this and can run into them again.
And so now we're seeing him at the hotel, right?
Yes. Yeah. And he's tracked down Carol and Jack. He knows where they are.
Okay.
So that is
he invisible at this point? Is that why we're only seeing his eyes?
Yeah, okay. He's starting to basically. You find out that Jack's been chafing and bleeding, and because he's been working out so much, and honestly, it does affect his physiology. Like the serum does make it so his skin is more sensitive. If that's okay. And basically, he's been kind of like cleaning himself with the blood to and digesting what he can. He's been kind of like picking it up. So he doesn't have much, and kind of you have him flicker in and out.
Okay.
On like the fingers and stuff like that, the stuff that's farthest away from the central nervous system and the digestive system and stuff.
The logic of this can be slippery.
Yeah, but also
totally fine.
Not completely. In the big fight with the invisible vampires in House of Dracula, we have the idea of vampires like gradually becoming visible again. We did it from the inside out, like internal organs first. Right. We can do it whichever way, whatever's cool.
Yeah, and whatever the WWE can afford.
Well, we have Endeavor money now, so I think
That's true. That's true.
So basically, they fade to black, they do the whole thing, and you find Miz down at the vending machine. So he's down at the vending machine, and he's just getting a snack because he's hungry, and he's trying to figure out. He told Ricochet he's going to get him something, and he just gets him the worst possible snack you guys can pick.
Unsalted peanuts.
Yeah, exactly. And he's like, oh, 50 cents? Awesome. You find out that Miz is like impossibly cheap, too. And he sees a jacket, which we know because we've seen the movies is the jacket, the trench coat style jacket that Jack wears.
Okay.
Because of all the chafing and stuff like that, he doesn't want to wear it. He's been wearing mostly the bandages, right? Because like it hurts. Okay. So he leaves it. There's kind of like a trail of blood, like not a lot of blood, but enough blood that you're like kind of worried about Jack, to a bathroom, like the public bathroom. And the Miz is like very excited because he sees this jacket and he's like, I don't even have to say sorry to Maurice. I can wear pants. I have this jacket. I'll be fine. So he grabs the jacket. He looks around. He does and Jack, sees him take the jacket, and he starts walking towards the elevator, and Ricochet is already in the elevator. It turns out he's been waiting for like 5 minutes for the Miz. And he goes, here, and he throws him salted peanuts, and he just looks at him like, are you fucking kidding me? So they get in the elevator, and then Jack runs in after them because he wants his jacket back because it's his jacket. And that's where the match starts.
In the elevator.
In the elevator, yes.
That's cool. I've never seen that done before in a wrestling context.
Well, there was that, Nick, you probably remember this better than me. They did during the pandemic.
The Money in the Bank, yes.
Where they go
to the
rooftop Money in the Bank match. It was like a race to get to the top of the corporate building.
Did they wrestle in the elevator?
In the elevator, on the stairs. It was a race through the WWE offices to get to the roof so you could get to the Money in the Bank.
I checked that out. That's pretty cool.
It was a lot of fun, actually.
All right, so they're going to fight in the elevator. And at this point, Jack is fully invisible. So we have Miz and Ricochet sort of selling hits that we don't see and having to kind of create the negative space for him.
Yes. Yeah. So the Miz knows what he's done because he hears, hey, it's my coat. And he's like, what? And he does basically the same thing that he did when he found out that he got in trouble, that he's the one that put the ethyl alcohol in Ricochet. It's like very similar. So they end up basically fighting over the floors. It's similar, but obviously not as good as the Captain America fight, in the sense of like it's a lot of action centered around one person, but that one person is invisible.
Kind of the slapstick of the movie too, where it's just like, you're just seeing the fallout of his actions. Yeah,
so they basically they keep brawling, and they spill out into what turns out to be you know how a lot of hotels have and hospitals have this too. They have the double-sided elevators. So it opens up on the kitchen, and then they start fighting in the kitchen.
Oh, perfect.
A lot of chances for like floating cutlery and things like that.
So that's exactly what I was going to say. Jack doesn't want to hurt anybody, but he does want his jacket back. So he starts throwing spoons at the Miz. Wood ones, metal ones as big as his head.
Yep.
And they're just going back and forth, and the Miz is knocking everything down, and then he gets a pie in the face. Shot the exact same way as the Kevin Owens pie. As a callback to that, Kevin Owens, for those who don't know, is a very popular wrestler, and one of the great mysteries in the history of the WWE is who hit Kevin Owens with a pie at the end of the 4th of July party that they had. It's like
7 years ago.
7 years ago.
And we'll never know.
And we'll never know. He even explained, like, no, you saw the shot, the magic shot of through my eyes. All I saw was a pie. So no one knows who did it. Turns out it was Jack. So that leads the Miz to really get upset. And he finally gets his hands on Jack because some of the stuff from the pie is on Jack.
Oh, yeah.
He grabs Jack from behind and he does what his finisher, which is the skull-crushing finale. On Jack, onto the waffle batter for the continental breakfast at the SmackDown Hotel. And again, this is why I asked about the cock and balls earlier. This is going to be not a replay, but an homage, a reference to the original cock and ball spot that you mentioned.
Anything with Jack now is sort of Chekhov's cock and balls. You're just waiting for them to make an appearance.
Exactly. So I figured that was a great way to start off and allow you to have a visual tracking of Jack. Now, Jack is a good fighter because he's been working out with Carol. Carol's still in her room. And she's wondering where Jack is.
We don't do mixed matches in WWE.
So she
no intergender wrestling.
She leaves her room because she's nervous. She's like, where is Jack? Did the vampires get him? The ghosts get him? We don't know. We can't trust this place. So basically she leaves. And again, this is where you see for the last time just the eyes of Walton Goggins.
Okay.
In the darkness of the hallway behind her.
This is so Scooby-Doo. I love it.
Yeah. So basically,
good.
Oh God, like she's in danger. So she gets on the elevator and she's going down in the elevator, and Walton Goggins' character opens the elevator doors as it's going down and jumps on top of the elevator.
Wow. Okay. She
gets down to the floor, the same floor they're on, and hears banging. And she's like, so she figures out a way to open the back door, and she sees John C. Reilly's cock and balls covered in waffle batter. And she goes, oh my God, what did you get on yourself? And he takes his finger and he licks it and he goes, pancake. No, wait, waffle batter. It's waffle batter. It's very important. Pancakes and waffle batter are two different things. She's like, well, what can I do? What's going on? He's like, that guy has my coat. And then she says, the Biz, the Miz. It's the Miz. It's Mike, the Miz, Mizanin. He's the most he has my jacket. I just want my jacket back. So she helps him, and the Miz runs off, and Ricochet's like, wait, what? Yeah, he took my jacket. I need it. Like, look at me. I only have so many articles of clothing. Can you help me? And Ricochet, being a good guy, says, yes, absolutely. So they start working to find the Miz and find the jacket. And that is where Walton Goggins comes in.
Visible now?
He's still invisible, but he's really starting to come back. Like, you can see his hands a little bit.
He is nude. Like, he must be nude.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, oh yeah. You're gonna see Walton Goggins cock and balls. Hopefully, God willing. I'm praying. You can't see. I'm not on camera. And that's essentially where I kind of need your guys' help, because I'm not good at horror. This is where you come into the pitch. Where do we go from here once Walton Goggins starts in? Because we have to get the heat on the baby faces. So how far do we go? And Dalton, I ask you in all sincerity, how do we maintain the tone of the slapstick we've been working with while also making someone like Walton Goggins seem like an actual threat? Dylan, what do you think? Either of you.
I think that what we could do is, I mean, there's room for, even like in a horror comedy, and Dalton and I are both very much in the camp that the two of them really work. Those two genres belong together.
Yeah.
Is that we can have a sort of a punctuated moments of darkness and scary that we can put in there, and then immediately break by either Miz or Jack saying something funny or doing something funny. Well, so I don't think we should be afraid to do something that is kind of shocking.
I also think that, I don't think this, given the tone that's been leading up to this, I don't think this needs to be scary. I think we can just...
Spooky. Can we go spooky?
But yeah, we need to establish some menace, right?
Yes, so menace. Exactly. Thinking Venture Brothers, Welcome to Malice kind of stuff.
I think we do stuff like, Walton Goggins is just like, we establish him as the celebrity threat, right? That he's got vampire strength. And so maybe he like spears Ricochet like into a wall and the wall cracks or something. And like,
oh, that's amazing. Yeah.
I like that.
He's power bombing people left and right. Like, he's just got the strength that...
Should he kill one of the hotel workers? Or is that too far?
Maybe for this, but I think that they should I think that Ricochet and Goggins and Dudley should end up in like a bathroom. That way you can play with broken glass. I think he should be speared through like a pane of glass from like a shower door. If you want to amp up the violence a little bit, you can have utilizing like the porcelain of the toilet or a sink There's all kinds of gadgets in there, and then you can
somebody
pivot.
gonna get
And you
busted
can
open
pivot to
hard
comedy.
way, Dylan?
Oh, I think someone should get busted open. Yes.
Hold on.
It's a
hold on.
vampire. There should be some blood. But I
hold
also
on.
think it's a great way to pivot to comedy because then you can like have somebody like squirt shampoos.
I like that. I do want to pause here real quick and just ground us in the reality also of what the WWE likes to show on TV. So, for example,
this is I had talked to Dylan about this because he did respond to one of my emails. This is actually going to be part of, with the new Endeavor setup, they're going to have WWE Plus, and what we're pitching is WWE Plus After Dark.
So this is like DC Black Label comics.
This
where
is
you can see
TVMA,
Batman's dick.
yeah.
Because I was going to say, here's the thing though. I think this works perfectly in WrestleMania, but what you do is you just do like the pixelated blob around John C. Reilly's dick. Like, I think the comedy still works. Like, you still just see like the mess of waffle batter and you see him reach into like the pixelated blotch. Like, I actually don't think this needs to be TVMA. And I think everything that's happened so far works better, especially also because Dark Universe, we want to get eyes on this thing. I think we want this on a pay-per-view. I think everything works just as well with a pixelated blotch, and you can still have like the blood trailing and stuff, but I don't think we bust open any wrestlers because that's something the WWE doesn't like to do right now, because they like the family-friendly thing, and they like being the sort of antithesis to AEW, who's showing blood all the time. I think this works as a pay-per-view thing with a little bit of censoring.
We can have our cake and eat it too. We can have two cuts. Horror movies.
We put like the uncut version on the streaming
on WWE
only.
Plus. Yeah.
Dalton, great idea. If I can do one thing.
Sure.
So when he scoops up the pixelated goop,
yes,
can we keep the pixelation on the goop?
Yes.
Yes, that is
like it's
very
the goop
funny.
that we're censoring. I love it.
That is very funny. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, good. Because that's what's dirty about it. We don't know where his cock and balls are until
what are those?
we're exposed by the waffle batter.
Yes.
I think because I think actually I obviously I can't speak for the company, but I feel like WWE would actually be okay with like horror vampire blood, but not like skull busted open blood, right? Like I feel like Dudley could like drain someone's neck and we could see a trickle of blood, but we wouldn't want someone's head going into a mirror and then bleeding. Like for some reason that's like different blood.
Sure, all right. I thought that would be cool, but I take your argument. All right, then I think that Goggins needs to take a big bite out of Ricochet's neck.
Sure, yeah, and I actually think it would kind of be fun. Maybe we do like a gimmick where Carol says like, oh, well, he drank enough not to turn him permanently, but temporarily. And we get Vampire Ricochet and he like smiles and he's got fangs. Now he's on Goggins' side. And then we get a tag match with The Miz and Jack against Vampire Ricochet.
How long
and
is
Dudley.
this thing, man?
I mean,
we're quick. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, these are fast spots. So these are fast spots.
Yeah.
Like literally, he needs to be turned for like the last 30 seconds of the match. You know, he just got to sit before he gets knocked away, and now we get Vampire Ricochet. You just got
otherwise this is going to turn into main event of night one.
No,
that's fine. Well, no, I mean, if you look at Boneyard was the main event of night one. So I think there is precedent here that you have. I know because I drew the Boneyard scene for the next column I have coming out. So yeah,
what we do is it's this and then a cool down match and then the main event, right? Let this be like a 30-minute segment at like 10
If we have a full half hour, that works for me.
Yeah.
And we'll also think Ultimate Deletion or the Final Deletion. Those are kind of the scale we're looking at where it's the whole last half hour of
and I think,
episode of television.
Again, one thing I'm always thinking about with all these Dark Universe things is fulfilling the promise of the premise. And if the premise here is that we have a vampire involved in a WWE match, I think one of our superstars has to get turned. You know,
and I will say I did have this idea a while ago in terms of that. Ricochet turns around and does the Thriller eyes at the end. That's all I have. The last shot is Ricochet turning around doing the Thriller eyes.
And it's a freeze frame and it's a zoom in, and that's perfect.
That's
the end.
But we did not license Thriller. We have some Jim Johnson or CFO sound alike.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah. The CFO sound alike specifically.
Yeah.
So how we get there is they fight back and forth. At some point, Ricochet does another Canadian destroyer, and all you see again is the pixelated goop. And since he's flying through the air, the goop kind of travels a little bit too. There's a little bit of play with the goop. So what you're seeing is obviously the pixelated genitalia, but also just a little bit of pixelated snow to really drive home that this is dirty, disgusting. And he does that downstairs. Not enough stairs to kill Jack, but to hurt him very badly. And that kind of snaps Ricochet out of it. He goes, "Oh God." He's like, "Oh, I'm sorry." Like, because Ricochet is pure at heart. I think is part of it.
I think it should also be kind of a twist, though, right? Like, he throws him down the stairs, and that allows Dudley to go in for the kill. And it looks like it's going to happen. And then Ricochet, maybe from the top of from like the landing above, what's the name of his like finisher where he flips in the air?
Is it Shooting Star Press or
Maybe.
the 450 splash?
The 450 splash. So he does a 450 splash from like the landing above on the stairs onto Dudley. And like, that's like our like kind of, that's when you realize that he's turned back to good, you know?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe we can play with the idea where he's like, maybe he's mounted himself on the railing of the stairs the way that you would on the turnbuckle. And because we know that we are still playing to an audience, even though it's not a live audience, we have him hold there the way that you might in a live match, like he's trying to make up his mind. But of course, in the context of this, so we don't know who he's going to hit with the move. And then we kind of see him snap out of it. Then he hits it on Dudley, and that would be where a pin would happen in the pace of a real match. But in this case, it just means that the match is over.
Dudley gets knocked out. Everyone gets up, make sure Jack is okay. And then when they turn back to grab Dudley, he's gone. You know, he's disappeared into the night. And then I like your idea for the Thriller Eyes thing. I feel like it should happen in the Miz and Ricochet's hotel room. Like, we follow them back to their room for the night, and like, there's only one bed, and so they're like curled up next to each other in bed, and then like Ricochet's eyes open and they're the Thriller Eyes.
Oh, I love that. And so I think, and I think that we have the ending. The one little thing I want to do is Jack gets his coat back, right?
Sure.
But it is completely like somehow in this time completely bedazzled, like covered in whatever dumb shit the Miz puts on his coats.
It's just magically turned into the Miz's type of clothing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that is how you know. Carol looks at him like, I don't get it. How did he have the time? And you hear like, does she have equipment or instruments to measure these things?
Yeah, we'll say
they
yes.
start to beep, and you get the look of like, she's like, maybe this is real. And then you cut to what the exact scene you mentioned, and that's kind of the end spot. I think that end works. So I think we kind of have the structure of the match. We have the beginning of the match. Do you think Universal's gonna be interested?
I think so. I think, again, we have to make it family friendly. I think both for the WWE and Universal, again, we want this to go wide. We want to get people interested in the Dark Universe. I think this would be a very fun promotional thing. And like you said, you know, we really only need our stars for like a day or two of filming.
Yeah, and I mean, even Goggins only has to be for a little bit, and Darcy Carden is probably of the three of them the most available and affordable. Like, she's
that's
busy,
exactly what I was thinking.
But in smaller roles. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, listen, we think she's great, and she's taking on more leads now. And of the three of them, is not like, you know,
not as big of a star.
Should be.
Yeah.
But it's like, so yeah, I think that's very doable. And I'll tell you what else, I'm prepared to make it canon.
Yeah, I like it in the canon. I love Jack being a wrestler. I also like that, you know, we've talked about how there's no Invisible Man film scheduled for our phase 2 after the Dark Legion, because we wanted to let that arc breathe a little bit. So I like that this episode surprisingly kind of works as our Invisible Man sequel in phase 2 for right now.
Yeah, like a little missing chapter, tide the audience over for when we get back. And also because this takes place before House of Dracula, kind of lets us have a little bit more of like the unsullied, chipper, affable Jack before
the Jack
he gets
that people
tortured.
love from the first movie.
Yes, that's great. I do think that if we're going to make it canon, if for no other reason than for like the wiki, I think we need to name the segment. We need to name the match.
Sure.
We could do something as dorky as like the Invisible Man. Or
no, I love that. The Invisible Man.
Oh my God. Fuck you.
Hey, I
hate
thought that
so
was a
much.
throwaway,
That's the
but
best shit
fuck
I've
it.
ever heard in my entire. Fuck, man. God
that
damn,
rules.
that's good.
All right, it's WWE presents the Invisible Man.
That's so good.
Thank
that's
you.
Holy
so good,
shit.
I think you just blew both of our minds at the same time. That's perfect, man. Oh, God.
That should be the
I'm
title
glad
of
I
this
brought
episode.
something of value to this
God damn.
episode.
The
Yeah, you've
Invisible
redeemed
Man.
yourself completely in my eyes.
No, you
Dylan.
know what, Nick? I was dreading this because you were such a pain in the ass about being on the show, and you're okay in my book. I think we can be friends again.
Okay, good. Thank you.
And I think, given all that, and given that we want to make this canon, I think we can lock this in as a picture lock.
Oh, God. You don't understand how much this means to me.
Hit the button, Frank.
It's alive! In the name of God, now I know what it feels like to be God.
And that's it. We're locked in. The Invisible Man is now canon in both the WWE lore. I'm making that decision for them, and in the Dark Universe. Thank you for you're the first person to ever script things for our characters.
I wish I could have done more with that. I feel like I let you guys down because I feel
No,
like I
not
did
at all.
It
Not at
allowed us to
all.
workshop, which is also what this podcast is.
And it set the tone perfectly. I think it really got us all in the spirit to jam on this story together. Top notch work there, Nick. We're really we're honored by the effort that you've put in.
We're glad we finally caved and let you pitch this crazy idea to us.
Before we get into the mailbag segment here, Nick, do you want to let the audience know where they can find you and your work?
Yeah, so you can check me out at the Nickster. That's THEN1CKSTER. That's basically everywhere. You can find me. I'm on Twitter the most, but I'm also on Instagram and stuff like that. And you can check me out at theringer.com/authors/Nick-Bond. I've been writing basically weekly, bi-weekly columns since last July, when I wrote an article about John Cena that he liked enough to tweet to his 14 million followers and give me a weekly column at The Ringer. Thanks,
You
John.
can't see him, but he saw you.
Yeah, he did. He was very
Fuck,
nice.
I can't believe we did an Invisible Man WWE match and we didn't involve John Cena.
Oh, shit.
I think
No,
John
at one
Cena
point-
is the John Cena in our hearts the
No,
entire
at
time.
one point we do need to have Jack lean down over Dudley and say, "You can't see me."
Yeah,
right?
but we won't know
yes.
that he's done it.
I mean, but we'll hear him say it.
We will hear
Yeah.
him, and we can do the camera angle like they would do. It'll work.
Yes, yeah,
It'll
yeah.
work,
We'll make
even
it
though
work. We'll
both
make
the
it work.
guys are invisible in this scenario.
Maybe he's got waffle batter on his fingers.
Perfect.
Still,
And
so we can
it'll
see the
flick
hand
back and
going.
that's perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. And all right, so we've kind of made the decision in the last episode that we're going to hold a lot of our mailbag stuff for the guest episodes because they don't run so interminably long.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been storing up some comments and thoughts from our various fans. First of all, big thank you to everyone who signed up for the Patreon.
Yes, thank you so much.
As we're recording this, we are about a week into the since the launch of the Patreon, and we are already a little over 25% of the way towards our goal of launching the second feed. Are You Afraid of Dylan and Dalton?
Yes, bonus podcast.
Yes, so thank you so much, everybody we're having fun in the Discord, where we discovered that we, in fact, have a number of wrestling fans who listen to the show that were excited for this episode.
Yeah, come join the Discord. We're doing a lot of talk about the episodes, and it's been really, really fun in there.
Yeah, I'm just talking about movies also, but yeah, we've been building out a couple ideas about the wider universe, which is kind of fun, and kind of jamming on it together, and that's what we want to do with y'all over there. So we also have had a couple of big, really cool fan contributions lately. These are a little bit old now because I put them on for the last episode, but Mike D 2049 on Twitter programmed ChatGPT to write summaries of new Dark Universe movies. So we want to thank Mike D 2049 for putting us out of a job.
Yeah, next week's Phantom of the Opera pitch will just be AI generated.
Yeah, I didn't even touch it. Leo A. Albuquerque has begun a project of creating a uniform style of 4K Blu-ray covers for each of our imaginary movies, which I think is really cool.
Yes, Criterion shit.
I saw that one of them got thrown up on the wiki for Frankenstein. I hope we get all of those up there. Lucas Nascimento, which I hope I pronounced, that's at Lucasfilms Filmes on Twitter and Instagram, put together a really dope poster for House of Dracula that I honestly
sick.
would like to print out and hang out in my apartment. So thank you for doing that. We had a couple cool responses to the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen episode that we did. Listener Aiden Valdez contacted us via email to share a full fan casting for the League of Nations movie, casting Antonio Banderas as Don Quixote and the other two Musketeers to join Michael B. Jordan were Forrest Whitaker and Regé-Jean Page, the latter of whom is having a really big week after the Dungeons & Dragons movie came out. You can find the rest of all the cast and crew stuff there at mycast.io if you search for League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. We had an unsigned email saying that the villain for the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen sequel should have been the Elizabeth Holmes of East Egg J. Gatsby. That's a pretty good pick.
We've had a lot of people pitching us villains for League of Nations, which I love because that was sort of the big question mark we had there. A lot of people have said Rasputin. That was a very common one. One of my favorites we actually just got today from Joan on Instagram, who pitched Charles Marlowe from Heart of Darkness.
Oh, interesting.
I thought of Heart of Darkness when we were in the episode because of the African colonialism themes that we came up with. But I haven't read it since like high school so I couldn't remember the characters or anything. So like, I think Charles Marlowe would actually be an excellent pick given the thematic content we came up with.
Killer. And finally, Tinho Carraro, hopefully I said that right, on Instagram, says that every episode needs to have at least one British character that we're required to do the accent. Thank you. And again, a hearty thank you to all of our fans in the UK who are still listening to the show. I promise you at least one British accent in the next episode.
UK listeners, I want to promise you that I will never write a British character into one of my movies because I respect you too much to poison your ears with my British accent. So, just whenever you hear a bad British accent on the phone, that's because Dylan does not respect you and wants you to suffer.
I do respect you. And
no, you don't. I've known you for a really long time. You do not respect the English. I remember when you used to make fun of our foodstuffs. You know what? We have a lot of awful food, but it's because we were just as hurt by the landed gentry as you were. I'm not even going to get into this, okay?
Thank you to all of our UK listeners. We love you so much.
Awful is a pun joke. It's OFF.
No, I get it. Hey, this year's Top Chef is in London, okay? It's a big cosmopolitan food town. Not for the British food, mind you, but from all the various former colonies.
You had to get that in there. You've obviously never had my leek soup, buddy.
Well, that's all we have time for today. Thank you all so much for listening.
Join us in 2 weeks where Dylan will be pitching The Phantom of the Opera, another new addition to the Dark Universe canon.
Yeah, I'm really excited for that. It's really coming together, and I've got some big surprises in store for y'all.
Thank you, Nick, for being our guest today. Excellent pitch.
You can follow us at Instagram and Twitter at Dark Universe Pod. You can email us at darkuniversepod@gmail.com. And you can leave us a voicemail at 917-819-2574. That's country code 1-917-819-2574. And if we dig it, we'll put it on the air.
I have tried so hard to come up with like a clever word or phrase using those numbers, and it doesn't exist. I am so sorry. I've been trying to come up with something easy for you to remember, and it doesn't seem to be working out. But
there's a link in the episode description.
Yes. So get in contact, follow us, join the Patreon, and chat with us in the Discord. And we will see you in 2 weeks for more Dark Universe. And until then,
stay afraid of the Dark Universe.